we'll get started tonight. I want to make sure that we have lots of time with Chris and lots of time to answer questions and have a good dialogue. So I'm going to thank you all so much for coming tonight. And I am hoping that you all are also making plans for coming tomorrow night to the Game On opening. And if you don't know what it is, the museum will be open from 8 until midnight tomorrow night, the summer solstice. And in addition to the video games exhibition, we will also have food trucks on the terrace and a rock, paper, scissors tournament in the Libby Court, right? Because we're not just all about electronic gaming, right? We'll have a live, quote, video game being played outdoors in the sculpture garden with a group that we found that does that with people. It's a party for all ages, and we hope that you all will come and have a lovely time. And the last time I checked the weather, it looks like we're not going to get the thunderstorms I was worried about earlier this week. So I want to acknowledge a number of people for making, well, not only tonight, but this exhibition possible. Brian Kennedy, who is the director of the museum, is the one who actually first spotted this exhibition when it was first offered on tour, and he is the one who really promoted making it happen here, and we were really devoted to making it happen here in the summertime, and Brian actually just walked in the back, so you can all say hi to him later.
Hi, Brian.
I just acknowledged you. They are Brian Kennedy.
That's what you get for sneaking in the back.
That is what you get for sneaking in the back. Yes, advocate for this show in spite of not being an avid gamer, I would say. I hope that everyone, if you haven't picked this up already, that you will when you go upstairs or you go out to the front desk. Not only is this a great little brochure about the exhibition itself, but it also has a guide to all of the programming we're doing over the course of the summer. And I'm not going to rehearse it all for you, but there's some really, really fun stuff, some things that are all about the gaming world specifically, but also some really fun movies and a great speaker in September, and just a lot of activities that we hope will just fill your summertime here. And I also want to remind everybody that Chris will be available for signing of his book after this lecture, and you'll be able to line up actually in what we call the Little Theater Lobby, which is where all of the great art objects are back there, and the signing will actually take place in the little foyer to the left there. But if you haven't already purchased your book, then you are welcome to do that at the visitor services desk. You don't have to go all the way up to the store upstairs in order to do that. After this, and we hope that you will all bring your books and all kinds of things for Chris to sign after his talk. So let me talk a little bit about your speaker tonight. Oh, actually, I just couldn't resist this. I'm just going to read you a couple of the comment cards we've already received on this show because I love these kinds of things, and we've only been open for 2 days and we're already getting these great comment cards. So this is from someone who is under 10, saying that I love this place. It almost made me cry. I just think that's so fantastic. I like listening to the phones. It was really fun. I love it. Thank you. Future museum goer right there. Attending this exhibition took me back to my childhood and made me happy to be a part of it. Thank you. Going forward, and then probably something that I could never have anticipated would be said about the Toledo Museum of Art, 110-year-old institution, that is, this show was dope. And with that, let me just spend a little bit of time introducing you to Chris Melissinos. Chris began his career at Sun Microsystems in 1994 and has been involved in video games, development, preservation, and advocacy since that time. He's the curator on this exhibition, developed it for the Smithsonian Museum, and the writer of the accompanying catalog for the exhibition available here also. And he is one of the most delightful and erudite speakers about the importance of video games in our culture, and not only that, but how those kinds of things can connect us to each other in different ways, how it is a collective history that we have that doesn't just go back to, let's say, Pac-Man, where this exhibition begins, but goes back into the history of our humankind. The Art of Video Games exhibition here is the only venue in Ohio for this traveling exhibition, and is the first venue in the Midwest. And we hope that you will come back again and again this summer for the great programming and to just be a part of this exhibition. So please join me in welcoming Chris Melissinos.
I am so impressed that you all made it out on Friday night for this. I'm honored that this place is packed, so I need to take a picture. You can all wave. Hey, what's up? All right. All right, do this. Whoever has the Nintendo DS out, I've already met 4 of you. This gentleman up here, good man, good man. So it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm very excited that the Art of Video Games exhibition is made out here to the Toledo Museum of Art. And you know, it's one of those things where anytime you go on a traveling sort of program like this, you always feel kind of weird. It's going, oh, it's the best, whatever city we're in, it's the best city in the country. You know, you go, this is so disingenuous. Well, here's what I will tell you. Between us friends, since we're all friends now, I think this is one of the best installations that I've seen of the exhibition since its original showing in Washington. And you know, there are a lot of times where people try to understand the medium. This group, I can honestly say, understands it from the additional materials that they put in, the artwork that Chris, one of the artists, one of the designers here at the museum, put together. You just walk in and go, okay, these people love games as much as I do. So thanks to everyone at the museum. All right, so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to take you through a bunch of stuff. So this is my life in video games, right? This is what happens when you're 10 and you have these terrible cameras, and then your stepsister who lives in England has access to a scanner and Facebook, right? And he decides to post this stuff on. So even as a little kid, I was completely enthralled in video games. That's my 40th birthday cake with the big Atari logo on it. And the cool thing about that was my wife and I went up to this little bakery, you know, where we live in Northern Virginia. Very nice place. This very nice lady comes out. I own the shop. How can I help you? My wife says, what do you want in your cake? And I go, I want a big Atari logo. And she's like, come on, for God's sake. All of our friends are going to be there. The woman wants to shop without skipping a beat, grabs a piece of paper and goes, do you mean this? And freehand draws the logo. Are you kidding me? She's like, oh, I used to love playing on our Atari when I was a kid. My dad brought it home, and I remember all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. She goes, I would love to make your cake for you. I said, okay, great. She actually went out on the web and found all the pixel art for the oldest games and actually hand drew all of these different characters from Atari games on it. So I didn't even want to cut the darn thing, but we had to get rid of it somehow. That's me and Nolan Bushnell, who founded Atari in tree pose when the projector broke at the Smithsonian during his talk. So let's go into some of that stuff. The music that you hear in the exhibition is done by a band called 8-Bit Weapon, who are amazing. It's a husband and wife team. That's the first time I met Seth Sternberger at a classic gaming expo. And I said, come here, with you in the orange jumpsuit. Let's get a nice pose like that. And that's a game machine that I actually built. It's actually a Sega, two different Sega machines that I direct soldered together to create what's called a Neptune, which Sega never released. And my wife came into my office while I was making this several years ago, and she goes, is this absolutely necessary? And I said, absolutely not. She's like, just stay in your office, man. Walks out and it's like, yeah, you don't understand, right? So video games have been an extraordinary part of my life, and they're actually what I decided to build my career around. Not just building technology for video games, but also espousing the importance of video games in society, in education, in our culture. And I'm going to explain to you why I hold that position. Okay? This was my very first computer. The Commodore VIC-20. Because all the spoiled kids that had Commodore 64s didn't actually know what it meant to program real games in 5K of RAM. 5 kilobytes of RAM, okay? And actually, you didn't have all of that memory available to you. You had 3,193 bytes of information available to you when you programmed. That's how you knew your stuff. If you could program a game in that small of a space, the games are horrible, but we loved them, right? And to put that in perspective, when you look at the Firefox icon in OS X, that's 64 kilobytes. 3,193 bytes versus 64 kilobytes for an icon that launches you to the internet, right? Funny how things have changed. And this is Defender, which fit into 8 kilobytes of space on a cartridge for this machine. Right? So you can see, even in the smallest package of information, people were trying to create these massively expansive worlds, and create the worlds they did. They were able to actually ensnare and enthrall us with these worlds that they were building. Plus, the Commodore VIC-20, this guy is the pitchman.
Why does the video game in fact, in the one computer of the 1980s for the $300, a Commodore VIC-20.
Yeah, here?
With a Commodore VIC-20, the whole family can learn computing at home.
Billy's doing more charts.
Under $300, a wonder computer of the 1980s, the Commodore VIC-20 coming soon. Commodore brings you more. The wonder arcade game and no mega racing home version.
Now, I have to tell you, when we saw Mega Race as kids, we lost our freaking minds. Are you kidding me? Like, how are they doing that at home? It was unbelievable. And I grew up in New York, in Flushing, right? So we had access to mass transit, but where I lived really wasn't accessible. So we walked everywhere. And I remember the one kid that actually had the machine first. He lived like 5 city blocks away. So you'd get out of school, right? In the winter times, you can start really fast. You get there, 5 blocks, play for 10 minutes, and walk 5 blocks back by the time it turned dark. And it was amazing 5 minutes of gameplay, right? And this is what we did. Uphill both ways. Absolutely terrible. But the question is, why? Like, why did these things enthrall us when we were kids growing up in this era? What that I call the bit baby generation. Right? We were the first kids to grow up with computers in the home, and those computers were video games. Right? You think about it, in the early 1970s, when technology was becoming really pervasive in American culture, the way technology came into the home was through play. It's not like anybody woke up and went, I think I need a computer today. Right? Nobody did that. We tricked, right? We were able to get these games into the home, kind of get our hooks in you, and then start to build on that. And these were the toys of my generation. And what's so wonderful and delightful about this is they aspire to be so much bigger than the plastic and the rudimentary bits there. I mean, look at these 2 kids in bow ties and lab jackets. What are they doing? Like, what are they building with this robot that they need glasses and lab jackets for? It's just amazing. Like, oh my God, what is this thing? And then this one called Big Track. Did anyone remember this? Right? You do. And everybody that grew up in this era remembers the commercial. This is a tank that you program using a keypad. And you would tell it, go forward 5 feet, turn 90 degrees to the right. Go forward 5 feet, turn 90 degrees to the right. So by the time you spend an hour programming this, it would go into a square and you're like, it's robots in the house. Like, oh my God, it's amazing. Absolutely astonishing. I love all of this stuff, right? But this is what we did, and these were the toys that we had. What we were doing was we were acclimating ourselves in a culture and with language that had never before been seen by the public at large, right? Throughout my career, I've had the extraordinarily good fortune to work with some of the most amazing people, and I wanted to share this bit with you here. This gentleman is Ralph Baer. Ralph Baer is the inventor of home video games. He invented the original prototype that we're playing on in his basement in 1965. It became known as the Odyssey by Magnavox, released in 1971. And I had the opportunity to go to his house, play with him on the actual prototype that he built all those years ago before it went into permanent archive at the Smithsonian, on the bench where he created it. And it was like sitting with Edison right? And like playing with his toys. He invented Simon, the roller matching game. He invented talking teddy bears and talking greeting cards. And just this amazing mind for toys and play and technology. And of course, every time I do some talks at elementary and middle schools, I go, "Why did you beat that nice old man at his game?" I'm like, "Because he was like 84 when we were playing, I didn't mean to, right? He's just a lovely, lovely guy, but this is a quote from Ralph. Anyone who denies that computers invaded the majority of homes via the video game console must have recently arrived from another planet. And he's exactly, absolutely correct. And at the time that these rudimentary systems were brought into our homes, this is what marketers thought video games in American culture looked like.
Only Atari makes the world's most popular home video game.
Look at those haircuts. And Dad was excited. Mom, check it out. Some, like, Uncle Ted in there. And then the grandparents. Kind of a piece of delivery. Yeah, have you ever seen a home like that? Right? No, nobody says, video games, I don't know what's happening, it's making noise. Right? We didn't know how to describe what was happening because it was all so new. Right? So what you were actually witnessing was the formation of culture, right? And the adoption of technology into society. One of the greatest, most awful movies ever made. I carry Tron with me, both the original and the remake, not because the second one was any good, but because it's Tron, so you have to carry them both. And I have them on my iPhone, I have them on my MacBook. Tron travels with me all the time because it's so amazing, because don't you want to live in that world? What I love about Tron is, as I was saying, with the understanding and appropriation of technology, we were also forming new language, right? So at the time that Tron was released in 1982, most of the American public had no idea what a mainframe was, had no idea what a computer file was, had no idea what a hard drive was. Because unless you're in the military or banking, chances are you'd never run across these things. So in the movie, there's this one part where Alan is talking to Flynn, right? And he says, why are you trying to break into Incom? And he goes, because, man, somewhere in one of these memories is the evidence. And what he meant is a computer file. The problem is, nobody knew what that meant. So they tried to use language that would be able to communicate this abstract compute notion in the language we understood. It's the formation of words, right? It's not very often that we actually get to see works like this that make their way into popular culture, that we're forming language, right? We were witness to this, and it's because of this hyper-evolution of video games and technology adoption. Doesn't mean it's trouble, right? So you gotta and everybody was scared. Attack of the video games, right? Gronk, Flash, Zap, video games are blitzing the world. For many kids, it's an addiction. Calm down, everybody, right? But you didn't know what it was, and so it's scary because it's taking all of our children's time and attention. We don't understand why these things have to be bad, right? It's rotting their minds. It's going to turn them all into video zombies. They'll have no social skills. All the same stuff we heard about rock music and comic books and movies and television and radio and novels and the waltz, which used to be the dance of the devil, by the way, in case you didn't know. Right? You can't let your daughters do this. It will pregnant everybody. And it's like totally crazy stuff. But this is what happens when culture takes form. When culture takes root to such a degree that a guard that doesn't understand it pushes against it the most loudly. That's when you know you're at the tipping point. And the games industry actually faced this just a few years ago. And it just so happens that it coincided with the launch of this exhibition, which is when the Supreme Court actually ruled that video games are protected speech. Right? There was a faction of people that were trying to go ahead and have video games classified as harmful and basically regulated like other harmful material. But the Supreme Court did the right job. They saw the evidence and said, this is protected speech. It may be something you don't understand, but it needs to be protected, it needs to be cultivated. And so today, we have gamers raising gamers. Right? For the very first time in the history of video games, families kind of look like this, right? Apart from some of the marketing families. When you see families like this dressed together to go to Comic-Con, it's pretty cool, right? You get people that are using technology in all forms, right, throughout their lives. You see 8-bit families on the back of cars. Video games have become part of the culture. Right? Because again, kids like myself that grew up in the 70s are now raising kids. I have 3 kids, 17, 12, and 8. So I have them in all these different spectrums. We all play games together. But why? Like, why should we care? Right? Why should we care about games? I mean, one can argue that it's a trivial pursuit. It really doesn't do a whole lot for us from a gameplay perspective. Right? It's because humans need to play. Right? It's part of every recorded culture since we started recording culture. Since we've banded together to form tribes and form groups, and we find it as a point of connection, we find it as a point of competition. How many people are watching the World Cup? Right? Okay, great, right? There you go. How many of you watch it out in a restaurant or a bar? Woo! Okay, great. So people go out of their mind, right? When USA scores, everyone else is quiet, and everybody goes out of their mind, right? Because it is about finding that connection. It is about tribalism. It is about seeing ourselves together, facing off for something. Play is how we discover our world, right? And play is a very important part of being human. Not just being human, but we see this across the entire animal kingdom, right? How do pack animals learn ranking order? They play. That's how they discover their world. And so when you take a look at all the different types of games, from the earliest recorded ones that we have from Egypt, all the way to things like Dungeons and Dragons, which is actually the oldest form of communication, the oldest form of storytelling we have, which is verbal. These are people sitting down telling stories to each other, making them up, right, as they go along. So before doing this talk tonight, I had the great opportunity to sit with the kids in the Family Center. And we did something called Placemat Dungeons. Now, this is something that I do with my son. It's something I used to do when I was listening in math class, attentively, and creating these massive stories on a single sheet of paper, where I would start with a character in the lower corner and say, where is this guy running to? What is he doing? And so what we started to do with the kids is, maybe he's running up. What is he facing? One of the kids in there says, he's facing a snowman. I'm like, yes, a snowman in a dungeon. Very good. Okay. So what does a snowman look like? Well, he's got fangs. Great, he has fangs. Well, how are you going to get past the snowman? This one very cute 5-year-old girl says, run up and kick him in the stomach. You could do that. Okay, it's probably a more effective tool in a dungeon to meld the snowman. It was like a torch. I'm like, that's right, a torch. So by the time we get done building the story, it is active storytelling, it's problem solving, and it's the story that some of these kids are like, let me show you the next piece that I did, and it's just blah, 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 blah. And now I call it Placemat Dungeons because if your kids are ever bored at dinner, you flip the placemat over, hand them a crayon, and say, draw me a dungeon. Right? And they will sit there and they will tell you the most fantastic stories born out of their imagination and problem solving skills, all on a single sheet of paper, right? Worlds on a page. Right? And so, again, it's that form of play, it's that form of storytelling that is so important to us as humans. How many people hate this show? You can raise your hands. How many people love it? Yay! Majority wins. People hate it because they go, oh, but we're not really like that. Us nerds, we're proper nerds. We don't display our nerdery in this fashion. Well, sure we do, 42 is what? The secret to life, and everything, right? The Flash, we have all the different archetypes that we see when we talk about people that are involved in math and science. Here's what I love about the show. It's not for the tropes, the stereotypes they bring out, but the fact that all the math is correct. All the science is absolutely correct. They have 2 theoretical physicists that they use as consultants to fact check every bit of that show. It's amazing, right? So when they talk about, in the very first episode, Sheldon says, he had a mathematical joke on the page, but it is literally a mathematical physics joke. Maybe show it to a physicist, they will laugh about it. Which is awesome. And this is why I love it, because what we're seeing is now the appropriation of this culture into the mainstream, into the popular cultural mind. And we start to see it make its way into other forms of media, right? Wreck-It Ralph was an awesome movie, right? It was a love letter to anybody who ever grew up playing these things, right? The Gamer Age, which I'm going to show you a little clip of, is a documentary that was done by animatronic Akbar. If anyone knows who Admiral Akbar is, it's a trap, right? That's the name of the company there. We have Ernie Klein, Ready Player One. How many people have read this book? Only a handful. That's your homework. Everybody go get a copy of the most amazing book probably written in 20 years. Okay, I love it. I've read it twice, and I've listened to the audio version, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, twice. Fantastic, right? Scott Pilgrim, which made its way out to the world. Seth and Michelle Sternberger, 8-Bit Weapon, doing global tours. And I Fight Dragons. Anybody ever heard of I Fight Dragons? There's two. Okay, so the rest of you are just being introduced to one of the best bands you've never heard of. And I'm going to show you why. So we see video games and that culture being incorporated in novels, in music, in movies. And we see the commercial appeal. Who knows what nerdcore rap is? Right? Nerdcore rap is hardcore rap done by nerds. That's right. And these folks travel and perform with mainstream acts. This is MC Frontalot. He is also a web designer by day, and he's known as the godfather of nerdcore. And back when G4 TV was an ongoing concern, there was an entire ad campaign they did called It's a Nerd's World. So let me play you MC's contribution to that commercial set. MC Frontalot is amazing, right? For those of you that have never heard of Damien Hess, aka MC Frontalot, that is the godfather of nerdcore rap. How about this lovely piece you may have seen? This is the commercial this museum did for this exhibition.
June 19th through September 28th at the Toledo Museum of Art.
That's a So this is a clip from Gamer Age. So what I want you, we just got done talking about World Cup. Okay, watch this. This takes place at the Evo fighting tournament every year. of weird, right? But no, it's not. These are people that have decided to go ahead and apply their skill at this particular game, right? And it's about finding the point of connection in competition. So I told you about I Fight Dragons. This is a song that they did called The Geeks Will Inherit the Earth. I'm going to play just a snippet of it for you, all right? And I only have them in my presentation because I love these guys, and they're awesome, and because their message is actually really good. These just things to delight or to find competition. When you look at games like Civilization, these are actually rooted in real historical battles, right? But the chance for you to actually go in and tip the scales of the past is how a lot of teachers are using this platform. I know of one professor at Johns Hopkins who only uses Civilization for the final exam in his history class. Pretty cool. How about Dumb Ways to Die? Does everyone know this?
Yeah.
You do, right? Do you know where it came from?
Metro.
In Melbourne, Australia, people were killing themselves on train platforms because they were being stupid. So they said, we need to tell people why you shouldn't play around by a train platform. So they created this game and this video to talk about what not to do in front of trains. And they had that rate drop by something like 67%. And this is how I'll play just a little bit of this, which is great.
Set fire to your hair, put a stick at a grizzly bear. Medicine is out of date, use private parts as piranha.
One more first. On don't chase a balloon across the train tracks, right? And they didn't get to the point. And then they created a video game that you had to try avoid dying in, right? But it was an effective means to speak to a population that may otherwise have avoided or ignored a very serious message, right? So we can use these games to better teach as well. This is a game called Remission 2. It was built by a company called Hope Lab, and what this game does is it teaches children who are cancer patients the importance of taking their medication on time, how to regulate their breathing, why it's important for the absorption of their medication. They've been able to show in the exit polling and studies how effective it's been. It's been extraordinarily effective because they can use video games as a way to take something that's very frightening and deliver the information in a way that's easily consumable. Right, so we can break down fear through this to better educate. This is a game called Journey. This game was created by a company called That Game Company, who created Flower, which is up in the exhibition here. In this game, you are presented in this world as a character with the scarf. It originally known as the Scarf Ninja, and everything in the world is actually made from the same material, but you have no knowledge of what this world is or how it came to fall. And so it is about ascension into a second life. You actually follow this character as they make their way to this mountain in the background, and they ascend into another plane. What's amazing about the game is that every once in a while you'll see a doppelganger that appears in the gameplay. And what it is, it's actually another person playing with you. And it always looks exactly like you. And it isn't until the end of the game that you realize every time you saw a person, that person, it was somebody else playing. And so it unfolds to 15, 20, 30 people that helped you through this journey, this life. The score was done by a guy named Austin Victory, and it was the first video game score ever nominated for a Grammy last year, right alongside John Wilkins. So this is an example of kind of emergent gameplay and art in a different world, as well as being celebrated for its music. This is a game called Rez, which is a phenomenal game, one of my favorite games. The artist, the designer was inspired by Kandinsky. Right, I wanted to create these kind of virtualized spaces that as you play through this game, you'll notice if you see the clip upstairs, as you attack the characters, the viruses in this computer world, their destruction adds to musical notation. The more effective you are, the more expansive the score. Right, so it lets you actually play with audio in the space. And then, of course, Video Games Live, right? This is a concert series that travels the world. They did 90 shows last year. You're watching the National Symphony Orchestra play 2.5 hours of synchronized video game music. And you're going to see somebody in first chair do something with their instrument that you've never seen before at a concert, I guarantee it. So let's listen to what Tommy has to say about this.
Video Games Live is having all of the power and emotion of a symphony orchestra combined with the energy and excitement of a rock concert and mixed together with all the cutting edge visuals, technology, interactivity, and fun that video games provide.
That instrument's got to be like, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, right? So the question then becomes, can video games actually be art? Can we look at them as a form of art? I believe so, which is why we did this. I think you may agree, which is why you're here, right? So it's always good to talk to each other. When I was approached by the Smithsonian American Art Museum to possibly be the guest curator for this show, this is one of the pieces that I use to explain to them how we, those of us who grew up with video games, those of us who have dedicated our lives to working within the craft, view video games. This is actually an ad piece from 1982, where Electronic Arts, newly formed at the time, didn't see themselves as programmers. They saw themselves as poets, they saw themselves as painters, they saw themselves as artists. And they went into their craft with the question in their head, can a computer make you cry? And part of the text actually reads that someday a computer may talk back to you and elicit what is in essence a smile, right? To reflect humanity back out of the creations that they've made. So even in the era where we had 5 kilobyte computer systems, these people viewed their work as art, and that has never stopped. We've always believed it to be art. The problem was we were so young, right? We were just children at the time that this industry was created. So we lacked the maturity in our vocabulary to describe what it is we were feeling, or what it is we wanted to say about these works. Here we are now in our 40s and able to look back and understand what it is we were thinking, how we approached this space. So my collaborator, Georgina Goodlane, who could not be here today, but it's her birthday today, so I wish that she was here with me to do this. Phenomenal woman. She was the exhibition coordinator for this. She launched the very first game art, alternate reality game, inside of the Smithsonian. She actually convinced the Smithsonian to accept works that were not actual works into their archive for this alternate reality game that she staged, at first for the museum. but one that also opened the doors for further discussion about the medium and about games. She started gaming on an Amiga 500, and she likes mustaches and paints pictures of monsters. She is a classically trained artist, but that is what she prefers to paint. Very awesome monsters. This is Georgina and I doing some field work at the Strong Museum with her battle hammer. She loves Ender's Game, and that's her first building in Minecraft. And every time I show it, she goes, "Tell everybody not to laugh. It's the first time I tried." So I'm like, all right, excellent. She started gaming on her Amiga 500. And so the concept that came out of the discussions with the museum was to demonstrate a 40-year evolution of video games as an artistic medium, and highlight influential designers and talk about the craft and core game mechanics. And by core game mechanics, I mean this. So here you have Pitfall in 1982, right, which stars Pitfall Harry, right? The designer, David Crane, it took him about 1,000 hours to learn how to program this moving man in a realistic fashion, but it took him 10 minutes to create this scenario in which he existed, because he had just seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. So David Crane, 1,000 hours plus 10 minutes to create the entire mechanic and setting that persists to this day. So when you see Nathan Drake in Uncharted 2 running through jungles and swinging across vines and clambering over rocks, you see Pitfall Harry doing exactly the same thing. It is these echoes of design that persist over time. The technology just allows artists to tell a bigger story, to tell a more descriptive story. You can infer that this is a jungle because you've got, and you know they're trees because they're green and they have brown. Right, and so it isn't too far of a leap to kind of figure that out, but at the same time you go, oh, that's a tree. I get it, because it's brown, right? Very good, and it's got some green leaves. And the entire premise around the exhibition is to highlight the three voices of video games. Inside of video games, we have the voice of the artist. Somebody has a story they want to tell, right? They have an adventure they want to take you on. They want to impart that through a game. We have the voice of the game, which is literally the mechanics. How am I supposed to play it? How do I move? What are the rules? And then we have the voice of the player, and that's you, and that's me, and what we get to do, and we can do this in video games, but no other form of media that we have, which is we can make small decisions, small choices that personalize the experience for ourselves, but it still retains all of the authority for the author. The author still starts you where he wants you to start, and he ends you where he wants you to end, but along the path you get to personalize the art for you. You can't do that with movies, you can't do it with music, and you can't do it with books. But you can do it with video games. So we decided to put, rather than just have me pick my 80 favorite games, which there's 80 of them up there that are among my favorites, right? What we decided to do, if we're really sticking to that three-voice premise, we wanted to make sure that those people who love video games as much as we do had a chance to see what they love exhibited in the exhibition. So rather than just pick 80, we picked 240 games, and we opened it up for a vote publicly and launched the website without any press or promotion. The website pulled in 2.5 million votes from 175 countries in a month. And it melted the server in the first 15 minutes. Before Carlos, who was working at the Smithsonian on this, we started emailing websites down, they're reporting websites down. He finally shoots back this email in all caps. Everybody shut up, I'm fixing it. Right? He did an awesome job. And then Georgina and I went in this ridiculously awesome green screen set where we wear my Tron Flim-Live shirt to announce the 80 winners online. And again, it almost crashed their video stream because so many people around the world were tuning into it, which is great. In the exhibition, you'll also see interviews that we held with some of the most influential people in the industry. This was all shot at the Game Developer Conference in 2011, and this is actually my hotel room. It was my 13th year at the conference, and the only year I've never been on the show floor, because I did 24 interviews in a 27-hour stretch, right? Not all at the same time, but across the days we were there. And I had to literally sleep kind of in that stuff. And the hotel staff loved us. And we stacked all their furniture on one wall. It was great, right? And Nolan Bushell brought a gin martini. Classy guy. I don't drink martinis, but when I do. And so we did all these interviews. And what was amazing about them is there were several times we had to stop filming because everybody in the room was crying. literally, like sobbing. One time, just uncontrollable. People are like, "What are you doing?" Like, it's like you've become the Barbara Walters of the video game. Jack, right? One of the discussions, and you'll see this gentleman upstairs in the exhibition. His name is Don Dabble, and he told us one story in particular. And I was asking him, why do you do what you do, and what is your greatest hope for where video games can take us? So he told this story, and he said, back when we were making Dungeons & Dragons Online for America online, it was a popular game, and one day I get this letter from this woman, and it was a handwritten letter. He goes, which we love. As a designer, we love to see writing and that sort of stuff. And this woman says, Mr. Dagwell, I was writing you to tell you that your game saved my life. He's like, okay, that's a bit weird to start this with. This woman went on to explain that she was in an abusive marriage, and her husband was becoming increasingly violent, to the point where she was allowed to go out and go to work, and then she would come home and she would be locked in her bedroom, and the only thing that he let her do was play on the computer. And what he didn't realize is this game she was playing was online with other people. She spent about 3 months playing this game, and it formed such close relationships with the people in this game that she told them what was happening in her real life. And this is a person who was going to work every day, couldn't confront her boss, her co-workers, didn't feel safe enough to go out to the police. She built a bond with the people she played with. And these strangers, these people who could not be her friend, got her out and had him arrested. And she said, your game gave me the people, it gave me the tools to create a bond that saved my life. He said, and that's why I'm hopeful for what we do, because there's so much more to these games than just the surface components of them, right? There's real human story in here. There's real connection. There's real aspiration. There's real dreams that are being presented through these things. They demand our respect, and they demand our attention, because if we listen, there's so much they have to say, but it's very easy to dismiss on the surface. And that was just one case of people really talking about the emotion of why they do what they do. And you'll hear some of them upstairs. They're absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Oh, and one more really cool one. This is Ron Gilbert, who started LucasArts with George Lucas. And this is Warren Spector. And Warren Spector most recently was hired by Disney to recreate Mickey Mouse through video games. And this was so awesome at being in this industry sometimes. As I'm walking Ron out, Georgina's walking Warren in, and Ron goes, is that Warren Spector? I'm like, yeah. He goes, can you introduce me? Sure. And hand to God, Georgina says, Warren's like, is that Ron Gilbert? So I got this great picture with those two guys, but the picture of them is like, massive fandom, right? And it's a love for each other as artists. And this is my buddy Mike. He owns more than 6,000 video games. Does everyone remember the story about the Donkey Kong dad? Did you see this? It was all over the news. That's Mike. Mike recreated Donkey Kong for his daughter, made Pauline the hero, made Mario the captain. And then he got marriage proposals like crazy. His wife's like, really? Really? Like that's what's doing it for you? And Mike is one of the most amazingly brilliant guys I've ever met in the space, and actually wrote the intro to the book. Phenomenal guy. And the problem is going in there, I said, we'll take you in there, we'll pick some stuff to go on the exhibition. And I get in there and I'm useless. I'm like, well, look at all these toys. Just go and I'm going to play, and so much fun. And then these are some of the construction scenes for the materials. The Smithsonian American Art Museum did an extraordinary job of putting this together. I worked with some incredibly talented people, Michael Mansfield and David Gleason, who helped to create the materials that you see up there. And they fabricated all of this. It was the most technically complex exhibition in the history of the museum. It was done in half the time of an exhibition of its size. And they did things like crowdsourcing voting and crowdsourcing donations they had never done before. This broke ground across so many different vectors inside of the museum, but has now set the stage for how they would build exhibitions moving forward. And here they are, putting all the stuff together, original system boards, and there's David with, I don't know, some sort of broom doing something, looking handsome in his scarf. As this is more of the construction space, which was really cool and awesome to see built. And this was opening, so we had Pac-Man cookies there. This is Georgina's proudest moment. She got a chance to meet Hideo Kojima, who is the creator of the Metal Gear series, and Ken Levine, who is the creator of the BioShock series. And she's like, I'm done. I got my picture with Ken and Hideo. I did the opening remarks here, and so that's my head. And this is Geometry Wars that the Smithsonian was displaying. That's about 120 feet across, which was awesome. Can't convince my wife to have anything remotely that big TV set. And this is what opening day looked like. So it stretched down the street in Washington, D.C. This line stretched 2.5 city blocks inside the museum. The line almost reached the exit, and people waited for 3 hours to get in. And so, the museum was like, well, gamers, are they going to wait that long? Are they going to be peaceful? Everyone's so respectful. It's like, what do you expect them to do? Right? This is Seth and Michelle playing at the Smithsonian, playing as 8-bit weapon. And this is me and my buddy Pat, who co-wrote the book with me, a very close friend. And he got everyone that signed the book he signed to sign his book. I'm like, oh, you jerk, that's great. I wanted that. I can't do it too. Thanks a lot, Pat. And it was just awesome to work on a project like that with such a close friend. If you ever have the opportunity to do something in your life where you get to have that kind of collaboration, do it. It was an amazing experience. And we held all these great panels, and there's Nolan doing his thing. This is the group that's coming out tomorrow to do the live video game. They're a phenomenal group. There's a sit-down that I got to do with Hideo Kojima. One of the things I should note, if I haven't mentioned it already, when you see the video upstairs in the exhibition, all that video is me playing. Okay, all of those games, except for Metal Gear, Sonic. The person you have playing your games doesn't know how to play our games correctly, and he's not very good at it. So we will provide you footage. So when Mr. Kojima showed up, I said, by the way, here's my memory card. I beat your game. I know how to play it. But if you want to do any camera angles you want, that's fine. Happy to let you do that, which is pretty awesome. What was really cool too is the auditorium in which we held this. The talk with Hideo sold out in less than a minute. And that's when you get a call from the Smithsonian going, who is Hideo Kojima, and why does he sell out this auditorium? Because it's Hideo Kojima, right? And then Kelly Santiago and Ken Levine. The gentleman in the red shirt here is Mark Delora, another very close friend. Mark now works at the White House for the Office of Science and Technology on MacArthur grant, and he focuses on video games in the government for STEM, for health, and for civics. And Mark is actually leading this tremendous charge in Washington as video games and coding as literacy for our children. Right? You want to get kids to read and learn mathematics? Let them build a game. Right? You break down all the fear of those things. Right? Hey, look, there's a book. Okay, so book approaches, right? So I wanted to share this other little clip, and I have a couple little pictures to show you, and I'll answer any questions you have. And I thank you so much for your time and attention. Okay, I mentioned I Fight Dragons because they're awesome, right? So these are the guys. So what happened was, all right, I got to tell you this because this is really cool. It's like a few moments in your life as a parent, you get to be like, yeah, I know, right? Right? Your parent, your dad's cool, you know. They're on the Warped Tour again this summer, right? They're touring on the band's Warped Tour. And in 2012, they were doing the same thing. They were coming through Maryland. My daughter, who was 15 at the time, was like, oh, my friend said I would want to go on to the Warped Tour. Can we go to the concert? I'm like, yeah, me and your mom will go with you. That's awesome. And like, what music you got, kids? And so we looked at this, and a bunch of good bands. We really liked them a lot. I'm like, I Fight Dragons is there? All right, we're in, right? So like 2 days go by, and she's like, well, we decided not to go to the concert because you're going. And so she went on a trip with her friends. So I'm like, oh, I really wanted to see these guys, whatever. So I go to Facebook and I get on their fan page. I'm like, hey, my name's Chris. We did this little thing with Smithsonian. You guys love games, right? Because you're using your music, and we love games. If you have a chance to stop in, I'll be happy to give you a tour. 10 minutes later, the lead singer, Brian's like, dude, that'd be awesome. So now my oldest daughter is away. So I'm like, hey, guess what? I Dragons is coming to the museum. She's like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Not only that, but Nintendo was doing their Wii U like private tour. We got tickets to that. So one of my daughter's friends said, can I go with you? We're like, sure. So all night long he's like, hey, sucks to suck, you're not here. So it was awesome because these guys show up and they're dead tired. They just had driven down from Connecticut and the museum kept it open. And my other two kids and their friends, they all made posters, and my son wore a dragon shirt, and they're all signing this stuff and everything. So Thomas, my son, and he was 5 at the time, he goes, Dad, when are we going to go see their show? I'm like, no, Tom, they came to see this show. And he goes, literally drops the poster and goes, you told me we were going to see I Fight Dragon show. And I'm like, I know, Tom. So Brian says, what did your son say? I told him, he goes, oh, we'll sing for your son. So this is what they did for him. Again, dead tired, no warm up, right? For him in the museum. Like a pop band that can actually sing, right? Go buy all their stuff. All right. So what I want to share with you now is some of the comments that we got from the exhibition. It's one thing to put this on and have a position, right? We believe video games to be an art form, an important form of art. We've always grown up with these things. We're raising our children to understand it. We have big messages that we want to say. There's hope for games and teaching us better and helping us to solve big problems in the world, all these things. But until it meets the public and until it meets anyone else that has that same love, you don't know, right? You hope that you got it somewhat right. So I'm going to share with you some of the comments here. So here's somebody that drew Link and Navi and wrote, great exhibit, find me on PlayStation Network. So PlayStation Network, yeah, it's a Nintendo character. Best place I have ever seen in the whole wide world. I know, right? Look what Logan drew. And you know, it's really, every time I do this talk, I feel bad. I've never tried to solve it. Like, I wonder if it is solvable. And who is the guy in the middle? That guy that's kind of bifurcated at the top. What happened in your dungeon, Logan? Leroy Jenkins. Flower is one of the greatest games of all time. If there were some headphones on the display, the full effect would happen. We'd be able to totally appreciate the amazing score and not have to hear the Mario Brothers theme. That said, I get teary-eyed watching people play it, let alone when I play it. Cool stuff. Nick from Lexington. Oh, my flipping turtles, this is awesome. This is the most awesome AWE-SOM place in the world. We're creating a whole new series of spelling games. This exhibit makes me feel at home. I feel like finally someone understands the true art. It makes me feel like I matter. What is a man? A miserable pile of secrets? Any Castlevania fans here? There you go. Exactly. Alec, the worst voice acting but most amazing game, right? Of course. Solid Snake, and then somebody graded it. What about the time sucking that happens to gamers? Effects on human interaction and normal life of lots of gaming. thumbs down, dislike Lane, 2 times Lane, and cool story, bro. I am Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite exhibit on the Citadel. All right, that's awesome. All right, this is one of my favorite pages here. My wife says this room reminds her too much of our house. In other words, great job. Now let me tell you why that's doubly funny. That's Ed Fries. Ed Fries is the founder of Microsoft Game Studios. Ed Fries is one of the 4 creators of the Xbox. His wife writes, "Let me know if you need to expand the exhibit." All right, so with that being, look, video games are a permanent part of our global culture, right? And we're just starting to understand the opportunity that video games present as an art form, as an important cultural component, and to reflect humanity. Video games will transform, I do believe, in how we play and learn about our world. And it's not gamers versus non-gamers, right? It's everyone. We are all gamers today, right? Whether or not you believe you are, you are. And if you don't think you are, don't think you have a game, we will get you. Like, we will find a way to get you to play. For all the people that say they don't, how many people play Candy Crush and say they're not video gamers? You're a video gamer, right? How many people play bridge online? You're a video gamer. If you just found the game that speaks to you. And so I believe that it will grow to be one of the most important forms in history. It just takes time. So with that, I thank you all so much. You said it's a bunch of hooey. No? All right. Maybe like 5 minutes of question, 10 minutes of question. We'll run talk. Yes.
As a game design student, what should I look at to draw into inspiration?
So the question is, as a game design student, what should you look at to draw inspiration?
Yeah.
Inspiration for games comes everywhere, comes from every place. When you listen to the designers talk in the materials upstairs, it's exactly what they talk about. I'll give you a great example of this. Mike Micah, who Donkey Kong Dad, they were working on a game called War of the Worlds, right? Everyone knows what it is. And they were having a problem with shading the sky. Like, you know, it doesn't look right, it still feels really artificial. We have a design aesthetic we're trying to go for, and I can't figure it out. One morning he was driving in early, and the sun coming up over the building in front of him just created this incredible set of colors. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. He's like, that's it, that's what we've been shooting for. And so they were able to find inspiration in the most ordinary and seemingly mundane things. So you have to figure out the type of games you want to create and look to examples in your life that will better inform those games, right? I can't tell you where to look for your inspiration, but just make sure you're mindful of the things around you, because that is what's going to inspire you to make the next big thing. Yes?
How great was it being with one of the greatest masterminds of all time?
How was it being with one of the greatest masterminds of all time? It was awesome. He's a very gracious guy. Of course, all of our questions are pre-screened and then go through, Japanese to English translation. But I did challenge him. Back in 2006, he had said that video games can never be art. He said, what I view is video game, I liken myself to a curator who places art inside of an environment. So I challenged him actually on stage and said, so after touring the exhibition, how do you feel about the stage you made in 2006? And his response was, well, I don't really remember exactly what but let me just say that I now believe video games can be viewed as an art form. So what's wonderful about art is that the people who purport to make art don't necessarily create art for the masses. And the people who may not believe they are artists may have their works appropriated by society as art. In many ways, it's not left to the designer or the creator. It's left to the people that absorb that work, find reflection in it, and want to hold it up as important in society. Right? And that's the stuff that we're grappling with today, is that video games being such a new medium, comparatively speaking, right, are built from people who study traditional art. Sculptors and painters and musicians and writers, right? All of these things we hold up individually and put it on a pedestal, put a little plaque there and go, ooh, that's art, right? But inside of a game, they all come together to transcend those pieces, or to become something bigger, to become something greater. And so even Hideo Kojima had changed his mind, which was great. Yes?
How do you, as you've looked at all of the art and everything like that, how do you deal with the kind of bias towards maleness in the art? 'Cause, I mean, I was very much interested in video games as a kid, but constantly felt pushed out of it. And we've only recently, even like, even like Pokemon, seen options for girls to be able to have a female character to play Pokemon when you're doing that on a video game. So how do
we deal with that, or what do we see reflected? It's a great question. It's one that the industry is grappling with right now, is gender role in games, right? Now, one part says, if I'm a storyteller and I have a story to tell, if I choose my protagonist to be male, that's my decision as a storyteller. But I think it's important upon the storytellers to broaden the stories they want to tell, right? As the father of 2 daughters, right, and a son, I want powerful role models in the materials that my children are absorbing. And so we are starting to see, that open up more and more. And we're starting to see most of it happen in the independent game space. We're also starting to see those roles reflected in very abstract ways. Anyone ever played Thomas Was Alone? No? A handful? It's another great game. Go play that. Thomas Was Alone is about a line segment named Thomas. And he needs to get through these environments and solve puzzles. And all of the pieces that he needs along the way are other geometric shapes. But they're girls and they're guys. They all have different capabilities that help each other to achieve, the exit from this environment. And through just these geometric shapes, these storytellers were actually able to impart real human emotion. Anyone that's played the game is like, it's such a sweet story. It's like, you feel so bad for Thomas. Thomas is a line segment. So I think that what winds up happening is, as the technology has progressed to a point where we can push the bounds of reality, artists are going to start to limit themselves, right, to create more abstract notions of games. And I think part of the discovery process there is making sure that we have equal opportunity for equal gender representation in these games. Absolutely, bar none, it has to happen. And it is. And I'll tell you why it's happening too. I've talked to many game designers who are friends. And we say, what are you working on? The next big engine for this big thing or this type of game. What I really want is to work on something for my kids. I'm getting older. I'm no longer that kid that was making these sorts of games. I want to push these boundaries. Right? And the independent game space is where we're going to see that flourish tremendously. So it's the right point, and the industry is having that very conversation right now. I think it's absolutely important and critical path for the expansion of the medium. So hang in there. They're trying. I know they're trying. Yes?
With programs like Game Maker or Unity, do you believe that independent games will become a bigger part of the industry?
Oh, absolutely. The questions with programs like Game Maker and Unity, which are inexpensive tools to make games, will independent games be the bigger part of the community? Look at all the stuff that came out of E3. All anyone's talking about are independent game developers, right? And what independent game developers means that I'm just not, shackled by a big corporation to create the art that I want to create. We have this point of democratization of information, right? It's almost free. We have this commoditization of technology. It's almost free, right? Or so low in terms of cost, the barrier to entry is very, very small. So we're going to start to see the most amazing games come out in the next 5 years that will dwarf what we've done for the past 15. I firmly believe that. And we're already starting to see those things happen. So if you're making games, keep making games. And by the way, you never make the first one great. Right? So don't ever get frustrated by keep making games. Marcus, who created Minecraft, everyone goes one-hit wonder. I've known Marcus back from 2000 when he started showing up on a forum that I started called javagaming.org. The man made games for a decade, right? He created another massive multiplayer game called Worm Online. You've never played it, right? But Marcus did that. And then he created Minecraft, the most successful independent game in the history of video games. And everyone's like, well, the guy just got lucky. No, he honed his craft for more than a decade. Right? Keep at it, keep at it. Maybe one or two more in the round.
There's so many old games that have been lost to time because the system can no longer produce, or there's no access to something, there's no legitimate way to connect. How do we work at preserving some of those older games so that newer generations can play them?
That's a great question. So how do we preserve, not just as J.P. Dyson from his Strong says, not just the games themselves, but the Rosetta Stones that we need to decipher them, right? There's a lot of work being done right now in the industry about that. One of the reasons that I started pushing so heavily for this was because I wanted to see us start that preservation discussion while the people who created video games were still with us. What an extraordinary point in time where, what other meeting do we have where the creators of it are still alive, right? That have just basically become a global phenomenon. None, right? There isn't any. So there's a lot of work being done in preservation and appropriation of these systems to try to go ahead and preserve them for future generations. I know there's work being done at the Library of Congress, there's work being done at the Computer History Museum in California, down at Stanford, up at the Strong, and even the Smithsonian has now started to take in games as part of their permanent collection. So we're getting there, right? A little bit late start, but we're getting there. And I think there's one more question back here. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a relationship in artistry and imagery between the creators of films, animated films, produced by someone like Miyazaki, who has done Howl's Moving Castle and Epic, to create a beauty, let's say, in the game?
You know, absolutely. In fact, if you look at games like Flower upstairs by Genova Chen, it is literally described as poetry. It's poetry in motion. Right? It is about you joining with nature and actually breathing life into a barren world. It is a poem. Right? And actually, it comes from a place where he had never seen grass before. Growing up in Shanghai, when he moved to California, he'd never seen fields of grass before. He said, it must be the same feeling that somebody has when they see the ocean for the first time, and I want to convey that beauty and that connection to nature in a way that's accessible, right? And so we see many, many games that actually follow the design aesthetics of the type of film that you've seen, and also use and appropriate a lot of the same techniques and technology to create the games that we have today. So we're seeing this incredible blending of the two, right? And there's no going back, and I think it's great. So with that, I think, folks, I'm going to be hanging out outside, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but thank you again so much for your time.